all living things send out a tiny current of light, biophoton emissions, and that this light sent out from humans and all living things is also synchronicitous. Other living things essentially are responding to it and respond in a synchronicity. So, Dr. Gary Schwartz, a noted psychologist at the University of Arizona, ran an experiment looking at this light with healers. And he had special equipment measuring light coming out of living things. So he could put plants in this special equipment, and it would be able to not only photograph the light and show it in real time, but also count it photon by photon. And so what he discovered was when he had healers put their hand in this and their hands in this, and he would ask them to send healing intention to someone or something, the light would go brighter in their dominant hands. It was significantly higher. So light may have something to do with intention. Their intention to heal changed the light. We see intention to heal changes magnetic energy. So there's all kinds of median energies. Those experiments have been done. All kinds of energies that change or are driving this. So what we have to understand is human beings, first of all, aren't solid and stable things. We are a mass of vibrating packets of energy of all types. We have electromagnetic energy. We have quantum energy. We have sound energy. Our cells make sounds. I'm writing about this in a new book I'll be publishing next year. And we are all kinds of energies. We're light energy. All of those energies are interacting with the rest of the world. We are not self-contained. The field is essentially what I defined as the field, is the 0-point field, a field of quantum energy. That is these vibrating packets of energy, sending energy back and forth, like some microscopic game of tennis. So when you understand that we're not these solid and self-contained things, that I end here and you begin there is not true. We are sending information all the time. We're vibrating back and forth. That makes sense of a lot of things, like the power of intention, that we are leaky buckets, or our thoughts are essentially infectious. We can affect other people and things.
It places a lot of pressure on an individual in some ways because we don't always have the most optimal thoughts for our day-to-day experience, right? And so if we are leaky buckets, we're also leaking some of our worries all over the place. How do you help navigate through some of that stuff?
Well, that's some of the things that I teach. I run various courses on intention to help people become more intentional in their thinking, because we have about 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And in one of my classes, I ask people to start noting down what they're thinking as much as they can. And of course, 3/4 of the time, it's negative. You know, does my bum look big in this? I hate her hair. I hate my hair. It's negative, 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 judgment, judgment, judgment all of the time. That's our running commentary. So we have to start policing it with more intention. And that's what I help people do. But as you say, I mean, this is the problem. And intention doesn't have a morality. Negative intention works just as well as positive intention. And that's why people have to be schooled in essentially how to think, how to project those intentions, and so forth.
On an evolutionary basis, it's quite revolutionary to be working with your thoughts in that way, right? Because we are, it seems, somewhat wired for survival and more fear-based as a species.
Well, yeah, we are wired for survival, but let me also clear up something else, which is the idea that we were, it's survival of the fittest, that we were meant to be competitively individual, that is, you know, that we are essentially Darwinian. I asked that question a few years ago with a book I wrote called The Bond. I wanted to know if Darwin was right. Were we meant to be so competitive? Were we meant to be fear-based? Were we meant to be eat or be eaten? No, the answer was resoundingly. We were meant to be communal. We were meant to connect. And when you look at not only animals, but all of the evidence about human beings, we need to belong more than we need to breathe. We need to connect far more than we need to compete. And so all of those things demonstrate we're not living our true story, essentially, because, we live according to science. Science writes the story we live by. And the story we've had to date has been one that is more than 300 years old. The story that Isaac Newton propagated when he decided and demonstrated that the world is populated by individual, very well-behaved things. Prior to that, that was not the belief, but suddenly it was, we are separate. He created the notion of separateness. And then that got amplified by the work of Charles Darwin, who was very influenced by population control at the time. And so he believed that life must proceed through struggle. So between them, we came up with essentially a scientific story of competitive individualism. But when you go back and look at all of the evidence, as I did with my book called The Bond, you see that essentially it's impossible to define anything as separate. From our subatomic particles to our connections with each other, to our communities, to our connection with the rest of the cosmos, there is a bond. And by bond, I mean a connection so integral, so profound, that it's impossible to say where one thing ends and another thing begins. We are intergalactic superorganisms, essentially. We're part of one big superorganism.
Is the bond sounds quite fundamental and literally like a fundament that we're carrying, and then you were measuring photons and like that light element of it. I mean, it's quite poetic in some ways, would you say?
Yeah, it is poetic, the whole idea that we are all one. Lots of people say we're all one, but I wanted to prove it. I wanted to demonstrate it. I have a background. I started out life as an investigative reporter. My early days, I was, I busted a bunch of international baby selling rings. That was my first big story. I had hidden tape recorders. I posed as an unwed mother. Remember, I was in my early 20s back then. And I found this international baby selling ring through that. And that was the work I was doing. And so when I moved over into this field, about 10 years later, I still had that, essentially that investigative rigor, and it's never left me. I feel that in order to talk about these things, they have to be demonstrated. They have to be demonstrated with scientific proof. And so that's what I've tried to bring to the work all the time. It's poetic, and I try to write it as essentially a nonfiction story, but it's also all true, and it's also scientifically proven.
Hey there, Inspired Evolutionary. If you absolutely loved this, well then here's a full conversation with this guest on the Inspired Evolution podcast. Check it out now.